All right, continuing chapter 11, section 4, disorder in China. All right, so Qing Dynasty to the warlord uprising. So if you remember, the Qing Dynasty, we've had dynasties for like 3,000 years in China, right? I'm going to sneeze, hold on. So the last one's falling in 1911. It's over. The army joins the 1911 revolution, kind of sealing the deal in the hopes of modernizing, okay? So soon Yingzheng or Yat-sen, okay, so Sun Yat-sen, that's what I'm going to refer to him as, was the new leader. But he failed to keep the country together. That's the problem, okay? So General Yan Shikai, okay, tried to set up his own new dynasty, though. So he thought by bringing this general on of a different area, because Yat-sen didn't, you know, his area was not a majority, but it was the largest group. So he brought this general on as well. That was another area. But he tried to make himself his own dynasty, and so that didn't work out. So by 1916, basically, it all falls apart, and there's local warlords across China that control different provinces. Everyone's trying to be their own king, and they have their own war, battles. They have their own small wars going on. And the economy collapses. Man, China's just been messed with over and over and over, and they're not holding it together anymore. For peasants, that means famine and attack by bandits. It's a bad time. So, a lot of people die. And then World War I brings even more problems. So in 1917, China actually goes with the Allies, and they declare war on Germany, hoping that they can get some help after the war. And they would hopefully be rewarded by gaining control of itself from foreign countries. Hey, we're on your side. We're not your enemy. But the Treaty of Versailles gave Japan the territory that had been previously held by Germany, including many Chinese ports. So even though Japan and China were both allies, they for some reason gave it to Japan. I don't know the details, but I know Japan's more modernized, so that could have been part of it. So this leads into the May 4th movement, and this idea was it was a movement to embrace these Western ideas, much like Japan has done earlier and had a lot of success with it. So this was also protesting the Treaty of Versailles. That was not very great for China. So they rejected the Confucius traditions, their old way of thinking and their ideology. Women I shouldn't say liked this idea. A lot of women campaigned for this as well because it gave them more rights and economic opportunities. But many began to actually, from here on, they start to favor Lenin's, socialist ideas, which later turns into communism. So Chinese Communist Party actually forms in 1921. This is a small group of individuals at first, but ends up being millions of people. One of their earliest, actually, just a minute, there was the vanguard. That was the elite leaders of the Communist Party, and one of them was Mao Zedong. And he was one of the founders. So this is the father of communism in China. And Lenin actually starts to send aid to China, at least to those communist people. All right, so building some goodwill with them and supporting those communists. All right, so at this point we have two different factions. Well, lots because we have all these different warlords, but the two that we're most interested in here are the nationalists, which they set up their own government down here. This is maybe the official government, and then we also have the communists as well. So we have, and again, in 1921, we have Sun Yat-sen and his Nationalist Party. All right, so right here, also known as the Kuomintang, I think I'm saying it right. And they established a government in the southern part of China, and they wanted to unify the entire country. Okay, so they thought they could defeat warlord by warlord across China with Soviet help. So even though the nationalists are not Soviets, they're not communists, all right. But they thought with their help, though, they could unify the country. But he actually dies in 1925, Sun Yat-sen, and so he put he didn't, not him, but Chiang Kai-shek or Zheng Xiaxi. It's two different names. I know there's, I don't know if it's the international name or the English name, but we're going to say Chiang Kai-shek, okay? He's the new leader, okay? And again, he's part of the nationalist movement. So with the communist help, Chiang Kai-shek captured new areas, which is good for them. However, the communists as a threat to, they see the communists as a threat. And actually, they order the nationalists, the Kuomintang, to kill the communists, kind of backstabbing them, all right? And the few remaining communists fled into the mountains, all right? So in the northern areas up here. And this betrayal ended up being a 22-year-long civil war. So what they call this is the fleeing to the mountains is a 6,000-mile route up to this area here, and that's where the communism takes hold. So they gathered a huge, and this is called the Long March, okay? So Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists, they gathered a huge army and surrounded the communist stronghold, all right? And he led the Kuomintang a series of extermination campaigns. So this is over a year. So the communists 6,000-mile march, and they started with 100,000 and only ended up with 30,000 made it to safety. A lot of them are just killed, executed. So this is Mao's Red Army, that this 30,000 that actually gets there, all right? And they actually, the people, the 30,000 people, they were or more than that, they were told to treat people well. And so peasants, they didn't burn property and just take things or hurt people. They treated them well. And so really his influence actually spread. This march was actually good for his cause in a way. He ended up looking like a hero because he was able to escape with a large amount of people still. And they saw him, you know, fighting the big guy, I guess you'd say. But he ends up being more of a hero figure and leader of the Communist Party. Okay, so Mao's march and his heroism fueled the popularity and recruitment of the Communist Party. And so actually people come to him to join his movement. All right. While this happens, Japan invades. So this suspends the Civil War. Okay, so Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong, they realize, you know, they have a common enemy here. Okay, so the Japanese attack again, the Second Chinese-Sino War, so the Japanese-Chinese War, and they want more. Okay, so the invasion forced the nationalists and communists, so Mao and also Chiang Kai-shek, to make peace so they could fight Japan. So here's the Japanese-controlled areas. You can see the Chinese Communist parties are in red, and then Chinese nationalists were green. All right, and the Japanese are moving in. They want more natural resources. And Nanking at the time was the capital, not Beijing. That's later on. Nanking was, and the communists actually Chiang Kai-shek actually moves away from Nanking, saying that's not the capital anymore. But anyways, the Japanese got there though, and they just brutally killed thousands and thousands of people. So in 6 weeks, they killed hundreds of thousands of people. Estimates are as low as 50,000, as high as 300,000. But it was civilians were killed as well. And it was called the Rape of Nanking because it was so bad. A lot of rape did occur. It's one of the darkest areas in history. I mean, it's right up there with the Holocaust, with how brutal it was and just senseless and violent that it was. I mean, they would just kill people. I mean, this guy is obviously no threat. He's in a hospital here. And I could show you horrible image after horrible image, but just kind of emphasizing it with this one here. So the communists in Kuomintang, all right, so again, Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong, or you could say the nationalists and the communists, right, with military assistance from the Soviets and aid from France, the United States, and Great Britain, they were able to hold back the Japanese, though, not make any more advances until the end of World War II. And of course, World War II ended it for Japan, and they pulled their troops out. All right, so then they returned back to Civil War to fight each other. Who's going to win? The nationalist Chiang Kai-shek versus Mao Zedong. What do you think? Well, it ends 3 years later with the communists establishing the People's Republic of China. The communists win. They just had more in it, I guess. And Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists fled to the Republic of China. So for a long, so here we go. The official government at one time, or you know, at the end of World War II. They fled to the Republic of China, which we now call Taiwan. And for a long time, the international community recognized them as being China and this something else. But in the 1970s, the UN and most other countries by then realized that this is the real China. You know, this is mainland China, the big China. Also the communist China, the red China. All right. So we refer this just to China now and this island as Taiwan. So, China's actually making some aggression towards Taiwan lately too, so we're going to see how that turns out. But we're talking, I think, 20, 30 million people versus 1.3 billion. I mean, it's a huge difference. So all of this is communist, and Republic of China is more of a capitalist, democratic country. Okay, much like Hong Kong, which is actually a protector of China now. and probably going to be part of China soon. Okay. All right, that's it, guys. See ya.